So I wanted to highlight for you guys a really significant monologue from CNN's Fareed Zakaria. Part of why this is noteworthy is because remember that previous report had come out listing who Joe Biden's favorite news personalities were. Well, one of them was Fareed Zakaria, and he rakes him across the coals for his Israel policy. Let's take a listen to a little bit of that.
When Hamas launched its gruesome terror attack on Israel on October 7th of last year, President Biden made a decision based on conviction and calculation. He announced his complete solidarity with the country. Biden must have calculated that the only way to have any influence on Israel would be to hug it close, show real empathy, send it the arms it needed, and thus earn Israel's trust to shape its response. It was a thought-through strategy, but it has failed almost completely. From the start, the administration urged the Israelis to consider proportionality in their response to Hamas. Israel heard it and went ahead with one of the most extensive bombing campaigns in this century against a population of about 2.2 million people that by Israel's own estimates contained about 30,000 Hamas militants. By one January estimate, more than half of buildings across Gaza have been damaged or destroyed. The administration counseled Israel against a large ground invasion of Gaza, advising it to take a narrower, targeted approach aimed at eliminating Hamas militants and infrastructure. The Israeli government had lots of long meetings with U.S. officials and then again went ahead with the ground invasion. The Biden team urged a humanitarian pause, but only got a brief one when it was able to get the government of Qatar to broker a hostage exchange. After initial operations wound up, American officials told Israeli officials that what was done in the north of Gaza could not be done to the south. Yet, after telling people to move to the south to get out of harm's way, Israel then proceeded to bomb the south in a manner that President Biden himself admitted is indiscriminate. The U.S. has repeatedly pressured Israel to make greater efforts to protect innocent civilians, but to little avail. Now it has been counseling against an invasion of Rafah, the city nestled close to Egypt, where over 1 million Palestinians have huddled together. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has promised to invade Rafah, whether another hostage deal is made or not. Washington has warned that after the war, there should be no Israeli seizure of land in Gaza and no new Israeli occupation of the territory. The Israeli government's plans are to do both. The result is that American policy on the Gaza war now appears hapless, ineffective, and immoral.
So he says that the Biden policy on the Gaza war has been hapless, ineffective, and immoral. Saagar, I don't have to tell you how unusual it is to hear those sorts of things on CNN, which we're going to cover the level of propaganda on CNN and the amount of internal pushback and upset about the double standards with regard to Israel and the Palestinians. But the fact that one of Biden's favorite commentators took such an aggressive approach, and I think lays out pretty aptly, looking back over the course of this war, how when we, meekly ask for something at every turn, Israel has been like, no, screw you. He puts it all in context pretty well.
One of the things I hate about Biden is that he doesn't have a coherent worldview. He kind of just trusts his instincts, and he's very obstinate regardless of what he chooses. Sometimes it works to my benefit, like Afghanistan. On Ukraine, doesn't necessarily work to our benefit. On Israel, I think it's the same thing. One of the things look, I disagree vehemently with the worldview of Fareed Zakaria and of Thomas Friedman, but you have to hand it to them. They are genuinely consistent, like in terms of the way that they view the world. And so within their framework, which is probably most aligned with Biden, I think it is clearly noteworthy what they are saying. I couldn't help but think also of one of Biden's favorite columnists, Thomas Friedman, and actually we have this, we can put it up there on the screen. He wrote it just a couple of days ago on February 27th, where he writes, Israel is losing its greatest asset, which is acceptance. And he writes, quote, I do not think Israelis or the Biden administration fully appreciate the rage that is bubbling around the world, fueled by social media and TV footage over the deaths of thousands of Palestinian civilians with U.S.-supplied weapons in Israel's war on Gaza. Hamas has much to answer for in triggering this human tragedy, but Israel and the U.S. are seen as driving events now and getting most of the blame. That such anger is boiling over in the Arab world is obvious, but I heard it over and over again in conversations in India from the past week. That is even more telling because the Hindu-dominated government of Prime Minister Modi is the only major power in the global support that has even supported Israel and blamed Hamas. That many civilian deaths in a relatively short war would be problematic in any context. The point, though, that I think of what he is showing within this is that it is not just the Arab world, where, to be fair, he did write the column from, so that probably is going to change a little bit of his outlook. More so, it's what I think I've brought this up, and you as well, in the context of a lot of this is, guys, regardless of whether you support the war or not, you know, rhetorically, Israel will not be the same as a nation in terms of its sovereign relations with others. I think that was a huge mistake because it's a tiny little strip of land that relies on global trade to keep it afloat. You know, you can't have a high-tech nation and Tel Aviv and startup and all that in the desert if you got nobody to sell it to, especially when you're in a country with what, like a population of 11 million. It just doesn't work. So especially also when you have to import a decent amount of labor from the people who now hate you even more to run, you know, to clean your toilets or whatever. I mean, this is all a very precarious situation that they were already sitting on. And the point of his column, and I think of Fareed as well, is to show that the international acceptance where people were like, weren't happy with Israel, even in the Arab world, but we're not idiots. We could see the Abraham Accords and normalization. They're just going in a different direction.
Very self-interested.
They've changed things completely, right? Things are more like the 1973 consensus today than ever, you know, since that time period. And that's a huge strategic catastrophe. That's something that Israel worked decades to try and get away from. And I think this has made them a lot less safe. And also the U.S. too, by aligning ourselves with it. We always know how to pick them, right? To make sure that people are aligned against us in a region, too, where we were trying our best, at least allegedly, to get out of because it wasn't all that strategically important to us, and we keep just getting pulled back in by our over and over again by our mistakes.
Yeah.
So I think overall it's been an absolute strategic disaster.
I mean, think about Biden has lost indivisible chapters, unbelievable, like the backbone of the lib resistance. He's lost Fareed Zakaria. He's lost Thomas Friedman. He's lost, there was, I don't know if you watched this interview that Bernie Sanders did with Alex Wagner, which, I mean, there were some issues there, but this is MSNBC, you know, primetime MSNBC, and Alex Wagner saying this policy of shipping bombs and then dropping this piddly bit of aid you can't reconcile it. It's irreconcilable. Yeah. So the fact that you have, you know, that much like across the board mainstream liberal criticism is really something. And I do think that's why they're trying to, what do they say, put lipstick on a pig? They are trying to change the image of their approach to this conflict. That's why they're sending out Kamala Harris to talk about the immense suffering of Palestinians and to call for this immediate ceasefire. Of course, it'll only be temporary, and then they'll get right back to the killing. But that's why they're trying to change the image. And, you know, for the, once again, what really needs to change is the actual policy here. Although, you know, it's not beyond people like Thomas Friedman to get tricked by just like the new packaging put on the policy. So we'll see. But, you know, to your point about Israel, they are placing a huge bet. And this is basically, you know, because Netanyahu, both for ideological reasons, but also because he wants to keep this war going so he can, you know, hopefully hang on to power by his fingertips. That's what his plan is. They're placing a huge bet that they can get away with a complete, you know, modern day ethnic cleansing, colonization, annihilation that we're all watching in real time, and that they will be able to get away with it. That's what they're betting on. I mean, we can all see the images. We can see what's happening. We can see the massacres. We can see the destruction. We can see the babies shriveled up, their bodies wasted, dying literally of starvation. A horrible image of a child who has been, you know, withered away and is fighting for his life right now, that has gone viral. These images of horror are everywhere. And they're hoping that with our backing, they will be able to get away with it. That's the bet. We'll see. Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.